Namaste, friends, and welcome to our Sunday edition of Words of Wisdom Gyan Ganga on our Virat Hindustan Sangham social media channels. As you know, we are on various channels besides YouTube, Facebook, and Periscope, Spaces, and various other social media outlets. So we welcome you today back to our Sunday program. And today we have a very interesting topic: why I returned to my ancestral Hindu religion. And we have in this program distinguished guest, Esther Dhanraj, who will be in conversation with our uh, President, Dr. Subramanian Sawmy. And I will give you a brief introduction of Esther Dhanraj. She is also known as Kamakshi, which is her original name, and is a staunch upholder of Sanatan Dharma. She holds a master's degree in English literature from Osmania University, India, and she's a research-oriented and she has a research-oriented master's degree in divinity, apologetics from Luther Rice University, Georgia, in the United States of America. Enabled by her master's degree as well as a former faith, she gained expertise on Christian doctrines and practices. She's actively engaged in debates and talks on TV and social media channels, in addition to actively supporting dharmic causes at the grassroots level in rural India. She counsels families and helps rescue youngsters who have gone off the track of dharma. Her active and dedicated contribution, along with other like-minded dharmic individuals, is bringing about the much-needed awareness about Sanatan Dharma. And because of this, she is now called a Dharma warrior by all those who have understood her and her philosophy. We welcome her to our show, and it's a privilege to have us. And as our motto of Virat Hindustan Sangham is to educate and empower our viewers, I thank our viewers who are spread over 120 countries who listen to this program every Sunday at 8 p.m. I have to thank my co-host, Mr. Ramesh Swamy and Professor Arvind Chaturvedi from Delhi. And I have to thank our technical team led by Ashish Shetty, Tejas Navalgul, Swaminathan, Ishwar Iyer, Rakesh Gadgi, Ajesh Nair, and Vishal Mehta for their background support to put this program together every Sunday. And as you know, today is the 156th episode of our series Words of Wisdom Gyan Ganga. With these words, it is over to Dr. Swamy to start the discussion and initiate this talk with Kamakshi ji. Dhanyavad.
Thank you, Jagdish. It's a great pleasure to have Ms. Dhanraj here, and she's a blazed a trailblazing in what she has been doing, and with a great deal of articulation. I've seen and heard her rather this kind of talk that we are having today. She has had in various other places, and she's very clear, articulate. There's no hesitation. There's no defensiveness. These are great qualities, and we hope to see that displayed today too. Now, first of all, I'll begin by saying that all Indians with a microscopic small amount excluded have the same DNA. That is, genetically, they are the same. And this exclusion will be people who have come from abroad recently and settled down here, like Sonia Gandhi. She's not, she doesn't have our DNA. Or there are some extreme, the Northeast, there are some people. But in terms of percentages, it's very small. Excuse me. Now, once you have admitted that all Indians are equal, or the same DNA, and Krishna Bhagwan in Gita says in several places, 3 places in particular, that I created the Varna system, and it was based on gunas, not on birth. He specifically says it's not on birth. He says, if you are a Jnani, Tyagi, and Sasi, you are a Brahmin. You can be born in any family. So Vishwamitra was born in Kshatriya family. He was considered Maharishi. Vedavyasa's mother was a fisherwoman. He's a Maharishi. Similarly, Kalidasa was in the forest. He was actually a Vanvasi. He also, we call him as a Brahmin, as a Maharishi. So there are a large number of examples. Mahatma Gandhi, for example, or Dr. Ambedkar. I would say that if you are a true believer in the Hindu system, you would regard both of them as Brahmins. It's not a great privilege to be a Brahmin, but it's a great effort you have to make to earn that thing, because you have to guide the society. And the kings used to bow before Brahmins, that you will not see in any other country. So I start with this thing that we are all Indians are one, and there is no such thing as higher caste, lower caste, nothing of the kind. The caste is not even our word. We have Varna and Jati. Jati is for marriages, so you don't marry with the same blood. Brothers and sisters should not marry. So the same way, certain cousins cannot marry. There are lots of these rules we have, and on that basis, Jati is completely separate. That's birth-based. But Varna, as Krishna says, is based on gunas. So in that sense, we now look at the Christian position. The population of Christians in India as a percentage, you'll be surprised if you look at the 51 census, 61 census, 71 census, 81 census, 91 census, 2011 census, and 2001 census. All these 10-year period censuses, the Christian population as a ratio of total population has not changed except for one decimal point or the other, but on an average of 2.3% of the Indian population. I personally am not concerned about Christians growing so big by conversion that they're going to take over the Hindu population. I'm not concerned with that. I am concerned with the legacy which the British have left, which is the Christianization of our culture. And that is not our culture. It is not our religion. In our religion, we believe all religions lead to God. Do the Christians believe that? They don't believe that. And they think that if you are not a Christian, then you are possessed by the devil. And there are all kinds of things. And I don't know whether the Bible as written by St. Paul is really the Bible or of Jesus Christ, or he made it all up. I don't know that. I think Miss Dhanraj will tell us. And so my first point is this. My concern with the Christian population is not that they are growing too big in percentage terms. My concern is that they have the legacy of the British colonial, stamp on our society, of killing Sanskrit, of writing all rubbishy history books for us, made us feel as some kind of people who have come from different parts of the world and so on. So they are a pernicious influence in the integrity of India. And what they preach is that. And the videos I've seen of Esther Kamakshi Dhanraj, she explains all this in very great detail. So I won't try to snatch her time for taking this any further, except to say that we are concerned with the fact that all Hindus are being targeted, not so much in terms of conversions, but if they get somebody articulate and so on to convert, that's very good. And many people are given that task, go and try and convert, increase the population. But I'm more concerned with the Christianization of the education that has taken place, Christian of values that have taken place, and with the tolerance of this conversion, we are going to have a situation where people will soon find ourselves culturally so similar to the Christians that becoming a Christian won't be a problem. So that is the reason why I'm concerned. Of course, Ms. Dhanraj is free to disagree with this and express her own point of view. This is a democratic forum. It's no, there's no nobody. We don't have one opinion. Many times we have deferred in previous things. Now, I would therefore ask you 4 questions and then hand it over to you. Number one, how, as a born Hindu, you had become a Christian? You were apparently 13 years old at that time. Was your consent taken? Did you understand what it meant? And did you were you at all stages unhappy, or you began to realize slowly, and then you made the decision? And in the process, did you read Bible and the epistles and so on, and find a connection with the real world? And see, I want to tell you that when I was teaching at Harvard, I saw a book, Jesus and Buddha, and the book compared the views expressed by Buddha, who according to us was in 1800 BC. I mean, the others put it at 483 BC or something like that. But we are, according to our Puranic calculation, it is 1800 BC. Jesus is, according to many of the Buddhist writings, is supposed to have come to Ladakh and gone to Hemis Gumpa monastery, and was actually educated in Buddhism according to several books. You can go to Google, and the first book was written by a Russian in some 1878 or some time like that. And there have been 1892, is it?
Yeah. 94.
So, 94, okay. And many other books, and there have been recent books also. And people here came even to make films. My own experience in Kashmir, I've not been to Hemis Gompa yet, but in Srinagar, there's a small suburb called Khaniyur. And I think if Jagdish remembers, I think he also came, if I'm not wrong. Jagdish, did you come with me to Khaniyur at any time? No.
No, not that time.
One of us came, I forget who it was. I went there, and there was a mosque, with the usual Islamic art, and there it was written, "Here lies the grave of Isa and Margaret. What were his
Mary
consort
Magdalene.
wife? So, they put her name. I went inside and I saw 2 graves there, and a man sitting there, and he says, "I am ancestrally looking after this." And this was Jesus, and we call him Isha, and he's buried here, and he's buried here. Now, I thought that if the Christians don't object, we should do a DNA test to see whether it has any connections with those in Palestine of that period. Anyway, that's another matter. I'm saying I'm going to ask Ms. Dhanraj her view. What do you think of Jesus Christ? Was he really there? Because he's meeting for 14 years. Now we have somebody claiming it was in Ladakh. And then there are books written that were actually Mary Magdalene went and took him from the cross and then raised him to back to Hemis Gompa, where he was treated, and he lived in India till AD 400. So many. I mean, I'm not saying I'm an expert, so I just read them and then say, "Mama, I must find out more about it." So I'd like your opinion about it. 2, you returned as an Indian. You returned to become a Hindu. What made you take the decision? And You know that Hindus don't proselytize, they don't go around campaigning, but if you come, you're welcome. And because we regard anyway all Indians as having come from Hindus. But you, in the question of becoming a Hindu, was that explained to you that your conversion to Christianity meant this, or you're just told now from today onwards you're Christian? So we'd like to know that. And when you decided to leave, was it a decision you took collectively with the knowledge of your family and your friends and so on, or you decided it has to be done and you just announced it? We'd like to know this because other people who are also thinking. I've met many Christians who don't want to be Christians, but they're afraid of leaving because of a variety of, and then the fear that the Hindus may not accept us because they may say that, oh, you're not a Brahmin, you're not a Kshatriya, so I'm began by saying that all this division is nonsensical. It is supposed to be with gunas, and we Hindus also, if we want the Christians to join us, we have to reform ourselves in many ways. And then I would say, do you think that there is a widespread unhappiness? Because there are areas where Christian population is coming down. The Pope is supposed to have said, and I have not been able to get the exact quote, but by a very reliable authority I was told, that he was concerned with the fact that the Europe and the United States and so on, the Christianity is going down. And therefore, he thinks that we should go on to Latin America and to Asia and so on much more, and see that the recruits are increased. So, do you find that any kind of turmoil, doubt, questioning that this is not any connection with the real world? In our case, we may have Hanuman growing to 70 feet and all that, but then there's an explanation given. In everything which we don't see today, the explanation is given. So, it is that kind of explanation. And so, I would say that if the Christian community for another 50 years only remains at 2%, do you see any future for Christianity in India? With these, over to you, and feel free to say what you feel like and what you think is right, and not worry about how we would receive it.
Okay, so you asked so many questions at once, Swamiji. So I'll try to see if I can address all of them. If I don't, maybe you can ask me the questions again. So the first thing I would want to begin is by, yes, I was born in a Hindu family, in a Hindu Brahmin family, Brahmin by birth, not by guna. So I mean, because there is a distinction between that, I was born in a Brahmin family. So all this, we were raised as Hindus. It was the atmosphere at home was typically like it would be in any Hindu family. My grandmother was, my father was a Gayatri Upasak. He used to perform Rudrabhishekam very often. My home always used to smell of camphor and sambrani. My mother was in Ratams every other day, every alternative day. And my grandmother helped us perform pujas during festivals. And I remember we had this beautiful, well-equipped puja mandir with a very ancient rosewood, probably Vyaspeeth, on which ancient Bhagavatam was kept. And I grew up listening to my grandmother reciting, performing Sandhya Vandanam, Prata Sandhya Vandanam, reciting Surya Namaskar mantra. And we were taught shlokas like Lingashtakam, Vishnu Sahasranamam, Bhagavad Gita shlokas. So it was typically a Hindu family, but years later I realized that it was all at a very superficial level. Because for us siblings, and we are 5, Hinduism meant celebrating festivals in a very lavish way, and watching our elders perform these rituals. There wasn't much instruction in terms of what is karma siddhant, how is dharma and karma related, what is Vedanta, what is the scientific value of our scriptures, the meaning of the practices that we were observing our elders do, nothing of that sort. And how could we be taught all that? Because our elders themselves were ignorant of all that. So there was absolutely no ingraining of any sense, a general sense of pride of being a Hindu in us. That was Hinduism for me. But this also began to change when I was about 12, 13 years of age, like you rightly pointed out. We were living in Odisha at that time, and our family was suddenly thrown onto a rough patch in life. And our neighbor was a fisherman. Why I call a fisherman is he was a fisher of men. And this is what the Bible tells the proselytizers to become. And Jesus allegedly says this in the Bible: come follow me, I'll make you fishers of men. So, every Christian in any setup, let it be a corporate setup or a college, university, school setup, or your neighbor, is a fisherman. He's always looking to fish men. Now, there's a difference between fisher of fish and a fisher of men. And that is, the fisher of fish carries a fishing hook, and the fisher of men carries a fishing hook, the Bible. So, this neighbor of ours got a whiff of our family situation, and then he set out to, bring out his proselytizing. He wore his proselytizing hat and coat, and he set out to proselytize us. So, my family was finally booked by this fisher of men, and we were hooked into that net. So my family moves to Hyderabad at this juncture, and here there were more proselytizers that joined in continuing that proselytizing activity that was begun in Odisha. So there was a local church which was actually funded by an Australian organization, and they started giving us preaching to us, visiting our family every Friday, and the whole process started. So the couple, the person in Odisha who had a wife, and they lived in Tamil Nadu, in Chennai. So they visited us in Hyderabad, and they used to live with us for maybe a week each visit. And the lady happened to be what they call in Christianity a prophetess. A prophetess is somebody who just closes her eyes and talks in these tongues that Christianity calls, in this gibberish language, and they prophesy. So it's a prophetic vision, it's a kind of vision. So during one of those prayer meetings, that lady said that God was going to, Jesus, the Christian God, was going to give me a gift of healing. Like, if you say that to a teenager, that she was going to get some supernatural powers, I mean, that's a very influenceable age, uh, 13, 12, 13. So I liked it very much, what she said. And that made me powerful, that made me like God myself. So I believed her. I didn't have any reason to not believe her. And then I thought, okay, this is a path for me. And I set out on that path. And my family began attending this local church, which was funded by Australia, every Sunday. And slowly, my whole family got Christianized. And I, with that, believed that I had this gift of healing, or I will have this gift of healing if I become a faithful Christian. Continued in me, it became firmer, became stronger and stronger. And I became a fanatic Christian for the next 25 years. So, to precisely tell the time when I became a Christian, it was 1992. And from then onwards, for the next 25 years, I became a fanatic Hindu. Now, you asked me what made me change, come back to the roots. So, after 10 years of my marriage, I moved to the United States along with my husband and my daughter. And I went there as an immigrant because my in-laws were settled there. So, as an immigrant, and as somebody who was on a very, very legal status in the United States, I got a chance to further my education. I loved to read. I like to uh, gather degrees. So I liked education. So it was natural for me to pick up a master's when I went to the United States. So because I didn't have I was not rooted in Christianity, which means I was not born in Christianity. I thought all the doubts that I was having were because I didn't have that upbringing in a Christian setup right from my childhood. So I used to get a lot of questions. You would wonder. I was always this rational person, I always have been, but that makes a lot of people wonder how did I stay a Christian for 25 years? Because logic and Christianity don't go together. So even Martin Luther, the founder of Protestantism, says that for a person to become a Christian or remain a Christian, they would have to gouge out the eye of reason. So you have to leave reason at the door before you enter the church. So I stayed in Christianity not because I lacked the ability to rationalize, but because I was afraid to use my rationalizing ability. Afraid that I'll invoke God's wrath if I started rationalizing. So Christianity not only discourages asking questions, it demonizes questioning. And according to Christianity, questions are seeded in the mind by Satan. And a Christian is to love the Lord with all her heart, soul, mind, strength. But if she questions, and if she vocalizes those questions, it means that she is not loving the Lord with all faithfulness. And no Christian wants to be called half Christian or faithless Christian. So, as a Christian, you would want to be the kind of person that the Bible suggests that you should be. So, even if doubts arise, a Christian is to brush aside those doubts. And if they persisted, the Christian would pray harder for strength to defeat Satan, because questions come from Satan. So doubt is basically vilified in Christianity, so opposite to what Sanatana Dharma teaches, right? So um, then what happens is, from the time someone becomes a Christian, there is a systematic maneuvering of that person's remaining rationale, whatever rationale remains in that person, towards believing that the only rationale of a Christian is to not rationalize Christianity. So all the doubts that one has have to be killed, nipped at the bud, right there in the mind. You can never vocalize your doubts. And even if you ask those questions from pastors or our elders, they would say God works in mysterious ways, and we as humans neither have the moral authority to question his ways, nor do we possess the intellectual capacity to fathom if God were to come out and answer our questions. So, why did I leave Christianity? So, I was telling that I went to America and I joined a seminary. Uh, because I thought that all these doubts were arising in my mind because I was not rooted in Christianity, and I never got a chance to attend the Sunday school as a kid, as a toddler, as a adolescent. So I thought maybe seminary was going to clear all these doubts for me. And at the seminary, the first lesson I learned was that it was okay to ask questions. I learned that I was not going to be burnt in eternal hell for vocalizing my doubts on whether the creation story made logical sense, or whether Israelites were really in slavery for 400 years under the Egyptians, or why the Christian God ordered the annihilation of entire races like Canaanites and other races that coexisted along with the Israelites. So, this knowledge, the knowledge that I can ask questions without the fear of being burnt in eternal hell, changed everything for me. And I learned that it was okay to rationalize my faith. So, that was lesson number one. Now, the question is, what about my seminary experience led me to think that it was okay to question? It was a track that I chose in the seminary, which was apologetics. Apologetics is actually the defense of Christianity against criticism. The very fact that a whole academic discipline has been established to systematically address questions and criticism indicated that questions had been asked I'm not the first person to ask questions, and the Christian community saw, even welcomed those questions and saw the need to answer them instead of demonizing the questioner. So the very first lesson I learned was it was okay to ask questions. It was okay to vocalize my questions. So in addition to that, the very first course that I took was called the Old Testament Studies. And in this textbook, I was reading that it must be, this textbook was written by a theologian, of course, an apologist. So here in this textbook, I was reading for the first time that theologian is saying that it must be admitted that the text of the scripture as transmitted to us contains occasional difficulties, discrepancies in statistics, and logical difficulties. So that was a trigger point for me. Here I was, a Christian for 25 years, believing that the Bible was the infallible, inerrant, divine word of God. So there cannot be any errors in the Bible. But here, this theologian, who is supposed to defend the scripture, was saying that, admitting that there are occasional difficulties, discrepancies, logical difficulties, and contradictions. Of course, because it's an apologetic course and because he was an apologist, he first produces the Purva Paksha and then he presents the Uttara Paksha. So that's what apologetics is. He goes on to say that these can be relieved by the proper use of textual criticism. But I didn't care about how they can be relieved. My question was, I was stuck right there. I was asking, why should there be an exclusive effort to relieve those difficulties? Why should there be difficulties at all in the inerrant, infallible word of God, which I was taught and I believed for 25 years? Now, Christianity gives very insufficient, unsatisfactory explanation to that, and that is, well, the inerrancy and the infallibility was only limited to the original autographs, the original message, which are now lost. Whatever errors we see today are scribal, redactional, and editorial errors. My first reaction to that argument was sadness. I was really sad that this is all we had, a lame justification. The question that came to my mind and still hasn't been answered convincingly to this day is, if God could not prevent, if the Christian God could not prevent editorial, scribal, redactional, translational, whatever errors there were, what was the whole point of giving an inerrant message? That would be lost anyway. And the related questions were, did God lack the foreknowledge that a day would come when only translations would survive? Or did he lack the power to control redactional and translational processes that the Bible underwent? Clearly, both. God lacked both the foreknowledge and the power to control. And that was enough for me to doubt the Christian God's so-called omnipotence and omniscience. So this was the second lesson that I learned, that the Bible is not infallible and inerrant. So with lesson number 1, that it's okay to question, and lesson number 2, that the Bible was infallible and not infallible and not inerrant, I began asking questions about the Bible, its two gods, Jehovah and Jesus, its doctrines, the way it was practiced, the way it was spread in the world. So all this thinking was shaped by the courses that I began taking one after the other for the next 4.5 years. I did complete my master's. For the next 4.5 years, I took course after course. And my journey of quitting Christianity was shaped by the courses that I took in the seminary. So when I got to church history, I had already finished studying the New Testament and rejecting Jesus as the Savior or the only true God. Eventually, I rejected that Jesus even. There is no way of telling if Jesus existed. And then by the time I got to my 4th year and I was doing my church history and all that, my faith was completely gone. And the last nail in the coffin of my Christian faith was the church history. That Christianity was not spread by the love of Jesus, it was spread by sword. So, with this, I completely quit Christianity. It didn't take me more than one semester to even know that everything that I had been taught, believed for 25 years was just farce. But from there on, I still continued to go into complete my master's. So, Dr. Swami, you then asked me the question of his, whether Jesus lived in India.
Yes.
So, in the biblical story of Jesus, his ages from 12 to 30 are unaccounted for.
Yeah.
So, in one verse, it says that Jesus, the story goes, shows 12-year-old Jesus, and the very next verse is the 30-year-old Jesus.
Yes. Correct.
So it's totally unaccounted for. They are known as the lost years of Jesus Christ. So
Yes.
this period is a biblical mystery that apologists have difficulty filling up. And there are no written records where Jesus may have been or traveled to during that period. And this has left a huge religious vacuum. And this gave scope to myth makers and even political conspirators to fill it with theories to further their agendas. The Jesus lived in India theory is also one such theory that took birth in the late 19th century. And this was brought up by a Russian aristocrat, Nicholas Notovich, more popularly called. So he published a book in 1894 called The Unknown Life of Jesus Christ, which is based on another book called Life of Saint Isa, or it's also called Life Isa. Life Isa is the title. So this was written in Tibetan and was found in Ladakh by Notovich when he was recovering from a leg injury. But the truth is, this has been long debunked, and there's a lot of academic research also, scholarly research also, debunking this whole theory, and the real agenda behind its concoction by Notovich has also been revealed. And I don't have the time to get into details, but we can definitely do another talk if the audiences would like. And the agenda behind why this Russian traveler concocted this is politics in Russia and politics inside Russian Orthodox Church, to which Notovich actually belonged.
I see.
So they had to protect. So they were in a conflict. The Russian Orthodox Church was in conflict with the Roman Church, and they had a few things to protect, because of which this whole story was concocted. Apart from that, there is no solid evidence to this whole story being true. But there are also theories which say that Jesus went to Paris. He escaped to Paris after resurrection along with his wife, and he had children there, which is what I think Dan Brown wrote his novel based on. And there are theories which say that he went to North America. There are theories that say that he went to Europe, someplace in Europe. That's where he died. So all that comes from those 12 to 30 years of unaccounted for life years of Jesus. But that then brings me to the fact that there is actually no solid evidence to the very existence of Jesus. Now, the historicity of Jesus is again a very elaborate topic. I will definitely be happy to do that talk also. So, when the discussion is about his historicity, there are two why, the WHY, that we have to ask. Why is the evidence scanty, fragmentary, vague, and so late? By scanty, I mean there is only literary evidence and no artifacts or relics of Jesus' lifetime. And they've been digging and digging and digging the archaeological departments in that area, and not one artifact has been found that Jesus may have used, like a comb, maybe, or some vessels, or the carpentry. He's a carpenter's son. So how come there's no and for initially he was there are not in the Bible, the Judeo-Christian Bible, but there are other gospel accounts that which did not make it into the final canon of the Bible, where it says that a lot of childhood matters about of Jesus have been discussed. It has been said that he assisted his father in the carpentry work, but how come we've never found anything that Jesus made? Jesus is not an ordinary child, so everything that he touched, he made, or he used should have been preserved by his family, because right from the beginning Jesus was that special child, the Bible says. So he was born of a virgin. Even his birth was extraordinary. So Jesus was no ordinary person. Everything that he touched or did or made should have been preserved, but we don't find any relics. The only evidence that has ever been submitted was literary evidence, which has now been proven to be fakes and forgeries. And I said fragmentary evidence. By fragmentary, I mean the literary evidence ranges from one word to just a few sentences, nothing more than that, about an extraordinary person who raised people from the dead, who rose on the third day, who defied death, perhaps the only person in history. So, and it is all vague because there is nothing, all this literary evidence, which ranges from one word to few sentences, is all vague. There is nothing to specifically say that they were referring to this Jesus of the Bible or this Jesus of history. And it is late because the earliest account about a certain Jesus as an earthly being is at least 100 years after the supposed time of Jesus. So this is one important question we should ask, that why is the evidence so scanty? The second why we need to ask is, why were the contemporaries of Jesus silent? And this is my favorite. A lot of people talk about these are the evidences, this is what certain person said, this is what Joseph Flavius said, this is what Tiberius said. But my question is, forget about the fragmentary evidence. Even if that were true, why were the contemporaries of Jesus silent? Presuming he was real, there were several contemporary historians doing their work, that is, writing history. Were there no historians, philosophers, geographers, or biographers, or any other kind of literary writers during the alleged time of Jesus's birth, time on earth? Actually, it's quite the opposite. The first century Greco-Roman world was teeming with literary writers, poets, military and political writers, philosophers, historians, geographers, biographers, and there were general commentators also, whose only vocation was to comment on the beliefs and traditions of the time and to report historical and natural events that took place around them. Now, these writers did their vocation with great passion, and there was no way that they could, such important aspects like extraordinary person like Jesus, they would ignore an extraordinary person like him. They had good reason to either meet and interact with Jesus, know him personally, at least take notice of him.
Yeah.
But none of them said a word. I want to talk about two people. One is called Lucius Annaeus Seneca, and another is called the Philo of Alexandria. Now, Seneca was also called the Seneca the Younger, and he lived from 4 BCE to 65 CE in the Roman Empire, right there where Jesus was supposedly raised. He was a Greco-Roman philosopher, a statesman. He was a de facto ruler for the Roman Empire, for many years. And there are four very important reasons why he could have been a significant eyewitness. And by the way, I call these people the could have been eyewitnesses of Jesus. I mean, that would have solved the entire argument today if these people had even mentioned that they heard of Jesus. Forget about not writing about him or reporting about him. They even do not mention that they have heard about him. So Seneca was born between 8 BCE and 4 BCE. I mean, Jesus was born between 8 and 4 BCE and died sometime between 29 and 33 CE. Now that's a huge gap, and because nobody knows when he was born, because he was not born at all. So we have these dates. Birth is between 8 and 4 BC. Death is sometime between 29 and 33, depending on which source we are following and which chronology we are considering. So Seneca would have been a contemporary of Jesus because he was born.
Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Bible was written by Saint Paul, is that right?
Bible, no, no. There are several writers of the New Testament. There are
Yes,
several
New Testament.
letters that Paul wrote.
But he never,
in
he,
the first
but he
century.
never met Jesus himself, right?
He never mentioned Jesus as an earthly being. That's very important.
Okay.
So his Jesus was a celestial person. He only talked about a resurrected Jesus. So what was happening, so Dr. Swami, was this guy, the Paul, whoever he is, actually even Paul's existence is being questioned today. So
Yeah.
Paul was actually writing on the basis of the stories that were in circulation of a risen savior.
Okay.
So
I
he was
was
just
told
building
that even
that.
I was told that even the birth of Jesus Christ in Bethlehem was actually based on the dream that the King Constantine's mother-in-law or mother had, and she said that he was born in that place, and without any other supporting text or whatever, Bethlehem was chosen because of that dream she had. Is this? Have you heard this?
I haven't heard about this particular theory of Constantine's mother's dream.
Huh.
I haven't heard about
All
that.
right. Okay. I have my other colleagues also itching to ask questions. Let me ask two
Sure,
short
sure.
questions.
Yes.
If you left Christianity because you had begun to have doubts, that is not, it's not immaculate truth anymore. There are, big gaps and so on. Your return to Hinduism, you will find that we Hindus love to debate, discuss, refuse to acknowledge, and so on. Wouldn't you see more of that in the Hinduism that you would see in Christianity? Disagreements, uh, analysis, Shankaracharya saying one thing, Manu saying another. You see, Hinduism is full of
Yeah, yeah.
debates,
So
disagreements. Yeah.
absolutely,
So,
absolutely. So there is a huge difference between the disagreements in Hinduism and the disagreements in Christianity. So Christianity also, several different denominations have taken birth.
yes.
In fact, 40,000 brands of Christianity have come up in just 2,000 years. 40,000 brands, different types of Christianities. So the disagreements are at the core issue, like whether Jesus existed or not, whether Jesus was, even if he existed, was he divine or not, was he really the Son of God or not. So, and even another core issue that there is greatly, that the Bible itself contradicts,
Yeah.
is on how salvation is attained. So Paul says that salvation is attained through faith in Jesus. Deeds are not at all taken into consideration. But then there is this guy called James in the New Testament itself, and he has written one book. He says that salvation is through good deeds, not just faith. So it's such a big contradiction on the one core concept of Christianity, core doctrine. But when you come to the disagreements in Hinduism, I think on the core concept of dharma,
Yes,
karma, we are in agreement.
that's true. That is true. The core concepts, you're right.
Yes, yes.
Okay, Jagdish, anything from our
Ma'am,
colleagues?
I have, based on some of the questions we was asked, I want to know from you, more details about how you all were converted into Christians, that Orissa, Hyderabad story, because lot of things are happening in that belt. So our viewers would like to have a first-hand information how exactly the fishermen of fish for men, uh, this attitude, how did this happen? Our viewers would like to know your family. I heard that you had a grandmother at the time living with you, with your parents. Something about that. What exactly happened? How did they play that role there? So I just want, on behalf of the viewers, a lot of questions on this issue. How did you become a Christian? A little more details.
So, so this is the case in every conversion. So this is how every conversion story goes. It's little, I mean, it's always a human problem that a family is facing or an individual is facing. And then if the Christian happen, if your neighbor happens to be a Christian, if your classmate happens to be a Christian, or a colleague happens to be a Christian, there is every chance that this person who is undergoing this very human problem will get converted. So I'll tell you an anecdote from my own life. So this was not the first time that this huge family of mine was a very big family, grew up in a big family, 5 siblings, my grandmother, my father, mother, and then my parents adopted my aunt's 2 daughters. So it was a very big family, including our dogs. So very sumptuous family also. My father was in a very big positions. He worked in the central government. Of course, he quit those jobs because to him job satisfaction meant not just hefty salary. So it was a very sumptuous upbringing I had. And suddenly my father saw that he had problems in his career with his job. And at the same time, my mother had a health issue. So my father had to quit his job. By then, he had already quit his central government job twice, actually. And then he was working in this private job in a senior management level. He had to quit that because of some reasons at office. At the same time, my mother fell sick. It was not a very huge, irreparable sickness. It was a small procedure that she had to undergo. As a mother of 5, she had very minor she had to undergo a minor surgery. Now, this was not the first time that such problems had come in our life. When problems come in every human being's life. So earlier, when my elder sister and my elder brother were young, I was still not born, they had health issues. So my sister used to get fits, and she used to be taken to a hospital in emergency. Similarly, my brother also had health issues. But why did my parents convert back then? And why did they convert at this point when my mother had to undergo a very small she underwent a very small what do you call a surgery.
Procedure.
She had to undergo a small procedure, yes. So it was a very small trouble. It was not anything compared to the life and death situations that they had faced with my older siblings. The reason that they converted this time and not back then is that back then we didn't have a Christian neighbor. This time we had a Christian neighbor. You see what I'm trying to say? So, Christian neighbors, Christian classmates are vultures. They are just vultures. So, they are just waiting to see trouble in the life of their Hindu neighbor or the life of their Hindu classmate. So, they don't do the same to Muslims. They don't even dare to take their so called gospel message to the Muslims. They do that to the Hindus. So that's what they did. They saw that this huge family of ours was at once thrown off balance onto this rough patch. And this man saw that he had a chance of converting our family. So he slowly began to extend a friendship. My mother had this problem of feeding people. She loved to feed people. So she's an amazing cook, and she always loved to feed people. And when she saw that this Tamilian was living all by himself, because he was working in telco as an engineer and his family was in Chennai, my mother saw that she could help him with some meals. So she used to cook and send this food to this person, and we used to go deliver that food to this neighbor. And slowly that's how he got a whiff of what was actually happening in our home, in our family. So then he started slowly saying that you have to, why don't you see, your gods have abandoned you. Your gods, you pray so hard, means so staunchly, they have abandoned you because they are not true gods. Follow Jesus and your troubles will be gone. I remember this conversation that my mother used to have with this church pastor in Hyderabad after we moved here. When that pastor pointed out to my mother that, look, your gods have abandoned you, she still didn't convert at that time. She was not completely into that. But these pastors were coming to our home and they were conducting these prayer meetings. So this conversation went like this. My mother said that she used to call him brother, the pastor. So he said, brother, this is karma. This is how karma shows up. So it's not like God has abandoned us. So this is karma. This is how it works. He said, what is a God if he cannot prevent your karma? So come to Jesus. I mean, start following Jesus. He'll remove all your karmas of all your past lives, and then he'll give you an eternal life, and all your troubles will be gone. So, of course, my mother was not so strongly rooted in how karma works. She didn't know how all that works. So, even though she kept debating with that pastor for a few more days, she eventually succumbed. So, these people have a very, they have an answer to everything, and we are not so well equipped, at least not in my generation, back when we were transitioning. I mean, Hindus are a lot more better now with all these YouTube videos, and lot of people, thanks to all those gurus and Swamijis that also run YouTube channels, there is lot more knowledge that is being dispensed. So, but that was not the case when my parents were transitioning. So these pastors have always this way of actually manipulating the situation. And Christianity always targets the female of the house, female of the family. So it actually it has 5 aspects of its strategy, and they are used to this day. It was used in the first century, in the early centuries of Christianity. It is used to this day. Christianity first creates the need. See, if Christianity had simply addressed the existing needs of people it targeted, I mean, back in the ancient world, it targeted pagans, and in the current Indian context, it targets Hindus. If Christianity just did address the existing needs, it would not have been able to take over much of the world. It succeeded in taking over the world because it actually created the need first that no one knew they had. So it's like it had invented this band-aid, and to sell this band-aid, it invented the injury in that opposite person. It created the need for band-aid, and the person did not even know that he was injured in order to sell the band-aid. So it created the need for salvation. It said, you are people, you are human beings that have sinned. You don't know when you sinned, but you have sinned, and you are in need of salvation. And that salvation can be only provided if you follow by Jesus, and we have that message for you. So it creates the need first, and then it claimed that it was the only religion that could meet that need. The number 2 strategy is it begins its work at the grassroots. So for any movement to succeed, it needs to have numbers on its side. This is exactly what Christianity did. It did not waste any time. In the beginning, when Christianity was invented, I would say, it did not waste any time by taking its message to the elite and the educated high class people in the Roman Empire. Because the educated high class Roman elite people were only 1% or less than 1% in Roman Empire. So what did it do? It went to the grassroots level. It went to the fishermen. They converted the fishermen and other illiterate people first. So the very first believers, after they got converted, they started sharing their beliefs about a miracle working power of a resurrected Savior. And when they were enough people and they knew that they could make a political impact, that is when they came out. And the sheer number, because of the sheer number of Christianity back then, Constantine was compelled to make Christianity the official religion of Rome. So you see how important numbers are. So they always begin in grassroots, and they are still doing that in our country today. They stick to grassroots. And the third strategy.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, Ramesh, do you have anything to say?
Yeah. I think let her finish, sir. She started something, so let her complete and then I'll.
Yeah. So I was saying the third strategy is Christianity eliminates competition. So what do I mean by eliminating competition? It demonizes its competitors first. That's what Christianity is doing to Hinduism. It demonizes all practices of Christianity. Back in the day, when it was early on, it demonized paganism. And today, in the Hindu context, it demonizes Hinduism. It is all or nothing for Christianity. So either we get all or we don't want anything.
Esther, thank you. I mean, that was eye-opening to a lot of those things that you've said.
Yeah.
The crux of why people get converted, as you said, it's brilliant that we don't understand the basics of our religion. You're just told this is a practice, follow it. Friday, wake up, do this thing, do this vratam or that vratam. You're just not told as to why you're doing this and what. At that is actually one of the core points. I mean, that's new to me today. I just learned it. And one of the viewers, his name is Roshan Kumar, he had a brilliant question based on that. So his question is, how can we, basically twofold. He says, how can we tackle widespread false narratives by the preachers? Basically, that stems from, you have to know your own religion first. So how can we tackle widespread false narratives by the preachers in so many different states in India? One. Second part is, do we have a support system for ex-Christians? Like you were a former Christian and you moved and are looking for alternatives.
I'll answer the second one first. No, there is no ecosystem for former Christians. A lot of people shy away from coming out. I've had several such calls and I get inbox messages where they want me to help them, understand it better. So they are in this confusion, this dilemma, don't know whether they should come out because you know how they'll be ostracized. Not everybody can just go stand against their families like I did. So they don't want to come out. They're afraid they'll be ostracized. They're afraid of the criticism that they'll get online. And I wasn't spared either. I mean, you'll find, if you just Google Esther Dhanraj, you'll find more videos against me than videos by me.
That happens to all of what you're saying is correct, which means what you're saying is correct.
Right. Yeah. That's my only saving grace. So that's what keeps me going. So
we all have this problem. Not to worry. Carry on.
Yes.
We have another case right in front of you, so we know what it means.
Right. Yeah. So you are, when you're criticized the most, you're doing the right thing.
That's right. That's the spirit.
So we don't have an ecosystem, and that is very important that we need to be there. Plus, I always say this. Have you heard the term called rice bag converts?
Yep. Very much.
My question is, if a strong Hindu rooted in like my family, if a Hindu can convert for just a bag of rice, why can't the Hindu be retained by being provided that bag of rice? So why blame the Christian that they are providing the rice bags and taking away our people? Why not retain them by providing that exact same rice bag?
It's rooted in the important thing that you said. How do you, from your childhood, the importance of a religion, the greatness in your religion, the first fact, as you said, the freedom to question, right? That's a very, very important value that in all Hindu families should teach their children, because that doesn't exist, as you said, in either of the Abrahamic religions. And as you rightly pointed out, the a person who's a soliciting will not go to a Muslim guy or any Muslim family and do this. Dare not do this at all. I've never heard of such a even a conversion existing in those countries, or even in not even in India. It's the
Not much.
target is very clear: convert the Hindus. Even all the so-called the ministries here that they put out their own YouTube videos or status reports or stuff like that, which I watch, their target is Hindus. They're not talking about any other
Yes.
religion.
Right.
Soft targets and
Okay,
yeah.
Arvind ji?
So, Arvind.
Yeah, thank you. My turn came late, but I have so many questions. I don't know which questions should I prioritize. But I'll begin with by saying that you have put your finger on neighbors and classmates, basically for conversion. Now, when I see the science of Christianity in India all over, we see two things: A, the churches, and B, the schools run by the missionaries.
That is the key.
And there have been stories after stories, almost one or more than one every day in the newspapers, how the schools, the teachers have tried to convert the students, non-Christian students. Recently, a girl had to commit suicide in Tamil Nadu because she refused to convert to Christianity. We have a Madhya Pradesh case where the students were failed and not allowed to appear in the examination just because they refused to get converted. Now, the schools, I think, are more instrumental in this conversion as compared to the other modes. Conversion to Islam, which is not so prevalent, madrasas don't do this. In fact, there are hardly very few non-Muslims who go to madrasas, and therefore madrasa, the source of conversion, is almost non-existent. But the schools, and most of these schools, one more question, that they are run in the, of course, you said the poverty is one of the reasons why Hindus convert. You come from Orissa. Orissa is one of the states, or at least there are a large number of districts which are very poor in India. Madhya Pradesh, Orissa, Jharkhand, and tribal belt. Tribal belt where the most prevalent problem is poverty and food. And now, of course, just for the side you said about the why Hindus don't provide the bag of rice and all that. Let me tell you, for last 2 years, our Prime Minister Modi ji is providing food to 80 crore Indians. If that is the reason, then this conversion in last 2 years should have been zero. But we keep on hearing the problem of, so the conversion is basically from the sources. One more thing that I would like to say, and you can comment collectively on all this question. You said they demonize the competitive religion. In fact, I would say no. They use the religion. Jesus is shown in Bhagwa clothes. Jesus is shown on a chariot, just like Krishna in Gita. And so they actually try to simulate a Hindu-like situation for Jesus. And that is how they attract the people, gullible people, because they can't then differentiate. And you have converted back to Sanatan. Somebody asked, how can we reconvert, or how can we do Garbhavsi of Christians? For Hinduism, it is very easy. Maybe just as a light note, you can take that. That if we say the Jesus Christ was the 11th avatar of Vishnu, then all the Christians will become Hindu overnight.
Yeah, so there are two aspects to this. In the beginning, I mean, so far, the assimilation, the syncretic form of Christianity is also a syncretic form. Christianity, in fact, is a syncretized Judaism. So they took Greek elements and they took the Greco-Roman elements and Judaic elements, and they came up with Christianity. So eventually they do that. But initially, all these years, all these decades, last 2 centuries, they've been demonizing us. So they demonize to such an extent, and when they are tired of demonizing or when that is not working, they bring in the syncretistic element. You see so many testimonies of Christian converts where they say that I was made to worship these demons. These were Hindus till recently, till yesterday. And today when they convert to Christianity, they already start abusing the Hindu idols, Hindu gods. We were taught that testimony. We were made to say that in church. Like, talk about how your gods abandoned you. Talk about how no Ratams worked. Talk about how your father's, years of Gayatri Upasana did not work. So they are taught. So unless they demonize, in fact, I've heard my father say so many times to these pastors, Pastor, when you come to my house, you are not using even one derogatory word about the Hindu gods. Jesus, I think, is not, my father said this, Jesus, I think, is not so weak that he can be elevated only when you can demonize the Hindu idols. So this is their sermon. Every Sunday after Sunday, they use these words in the sermon. And they call the Vijayawada Kanakalakshmi, Kanakadurgamma as a demon. All the Shakti, the Adi Shakti is a demon. So assimilation is one aspect. It comes at a later time. Eventually they assimilate to win the others, but their first strategy is to demonize and eliminate competition. And there are studies to prove this. Every culture they go, they demonize the existing traditions, practices, beliefs, then they make an entry, and then they assimilate. So it's a process. It's a strategic way of doing it.
One last question, Dr. Sawmy.
Yes.
So if I may ask, Esther, is this just you and your family that came back, or is just your all family came back? If that's something that I can appropriate.
No, has her family come back? Or
No,
only she
no.
has?
Only you.
there you
Only
are.
my siblings are still Christians. They're staunch Christians. So they have no plans of coming out of it, quitting it. But my husband was, he was never a true Christian to begin with. He never believed it. I think he was too rational and also able to vocalize his rationality, unlike me. So I have no problem with my husband in that.
Okay. I have one
So which is
anecdote,
why
Dr.
I'm
Sawmy.
able to come on the public platform.
Okay. I have one anecdote, Dr. Sawmy. I'm just not basing this on any scientific thing. Actually, I have a little bit of background in Sanskrit. So if I take Yesu Christu, that's the way Jesus Christ is called in India. If I split the word Jesu, it's Ye Shishu. Okay. In Sanskrit, there is a word called Krishakaha, which means a farmer. So I see, if you look at quote unquote, nobody knows, Jesus' father's profession, but if I assume that he was in those days, it's farmer or something or the other. So we call he's a son of a farmer. That's a very rough translation of the word Yesu Christu. That's my interpretation. It's got no scientific proof. It's just anecdotally, I just wanted to say this is my interpretation of the word when I Sanskritize that word.
One short question. Have you written a book on all this? About your experience?
Not yet, Dr. Swami. Not
So
yet.
do that. It will be a big bestseller, I can tell you. I think
Yep.
Arvind has to wind
Arvind
up.
is muted. I don't know.
Yes.
Arvind, you got to unmute yourself.
We have gone 75 minutes.
And
Arvind,
just one more small question. You have been in Sanatan, and you have been to USA, converted and reconverted. In India, there is a talk of uniform civil code. We are talking about uniform civil code. one civil code for all religions, whether it is Hindu, whether it is Muslim, or whether it is Christian. How far do you think Christianity is going to be affected by the proposed uniform civil code concept?
I think the only way it's going to get affected is Article 30, if I'm right. So
Yeah, 30.
that's the only, that's the only, I think education policy, minority education policy. I think that's the only thing that will be affected, and that's a great effect.
I've already
For
said
our
the
advantage.
schools are the biggest source of conversion.
Yes.
The Christian
Yes.
schools, missionary schools are the biggest source of conversion because they provide
Yeah.
the education at concessional rate and most of the time free to the poor people
Correct.
in that area, which is the catchment area, I would say, in that catchment area. And once they come into the contact and then they try to force gradually in
No,
a
no,
sequence like
no. Add to your point. Uh, I started off by telling you that census after census, there is the population
2.3.
ratio of Christians is 2.3. So what these schools are actually doing is subverting the minds of the Hindus. I mean, you are not you may remain as a Hindu, but you are not going to be, advancing the cause of Hindus. And that's why this secular and all this thing, you see, is brought up. And I know that many of the all these elites in India, they think all this is infra dig to talk about Hinduism and what Shankaracharya's debate is and so on and so forth. So that is what the Christian churches are doing. And then of course they need people. They get money from abroad for that. So they tried this by the methods Ms. Dhanraj has very vividly put before us. But then I think we may have to have more sessions with you if you are going to get full.
You also asked another question, Dr. Swami. How is it declining in the West, and how is it affects? So that's
Yes,
a very
that's right.
important topic, and this was a topic I presented at GEV. We
You'll
were
do
not
another
there
session
that day
of
when
that.
I presented. Yeah.
We will do another
definitely.
session. Is Christianity sinking or something like that? And you can talk
It
about
was actually, it's called Collapse of Christianity in the West and its impact on India.
We
Yeah,
will
that-
use that title. We'll use that title. and
So
we'll
yeah,
call it-
it's falling dramatically in the US per se. I can see the number of
E-
churches
e-
that getting
even
converted.
US,
Even
UK.
even in Kerala, I'm telling you, the
Yes.
Christian adherence is going down. And once they got these Christians to make the fatal mistake of having gopurams and things like that, the Hinduism will swallow it all.
Yes.
Anyway, I think we can go on and on. It was a superb performance on your part in terms of bringing out the facts. And there are many more sessions I think we should have because the country should know, needs to know. So, how do you conclude, Jagdish?
Arvind, let's conclude. It's already 100 minutes.
we already run into 70 minutes of this program, and
No,
according to
100
our
minutes.
80.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, 50 plus 20. Yeah.
80 minutes. Yeah, and normally we wind up the program within 60 minutes. That is our new norm. But this subject, in fact, Jagdish said in the very beginning that it will be very difficult for us to contain that everything in 16 minutes. At one point in time, I was about to suggest that let's wind up now and then have a next episode to continue. In fact, Dr. Swami has already suggested there are so many issues which you have brought, and so many issues which are not yet discussed, and people have questions. I was noticing today that the viewers' questions that we get normally, today we get almost 1.5 times the number of questions that we normally get. That shows the viewers' interest also in this particular topic. And one particular small question I had, which I thought I'll keep it to the next question, next episode. But let me just ask you this. In fact, this relates to what Dr. Swami said in the end. Dr. Swami said schools do not convert so much because the population remains static. I have seen three states, especially in the northeast. One is the Nagaland, which has almost 93-94% Christian population, Mizoram, which has about 90% population, and Meghalaya, which has about 85% population. The population, of course, Kerala, the whole the demography is changing. But in these three northeastern states, the demographic structure has not changed seriously over a period of time. That means 90% remains 90% over a period of 20 years. That means no conversion is taking place. Perhaps maybe that is the answer. And as I said, there are so many hidden questions and hidden answers we will discuss in some other
It's
episode. Thank you very
23%.
much.
The unofficial
Sorry,
number is 23%.
where?
Christianity is at 23%.
Yeah, that's right. He's 95% not correct. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
25%.
Where?
The
23%.
point is well taken. The point is well taken.
Yes, yes.
I think this thing that you mentioned about the Western countries and Christianity's decline, we will do a session with you again.
Yes.
And of course, that will be decided by these three here. And they will contact you. And I hope to hear you again. And I think all of us agree that this was a real eye opener for many of us. And I can see from the audience reactions also that they feel that this is a very important topic in which you have put a perspective and you've shown courage. Not to worry. We Hindus are passive and quiet, but when they want to stand, they can stand also.
I do,
And on
yes.
this
I saw
issue,
that.
there's a growing issue. In this issue, the matter is growing. We are concerned about that even after the British having gone, our religion is being constantly defamed and desecrated. So, in that context, we want to continue this interest in the public to know how the situation is, not just have an emotional reaction saying mine and yours sort of thing, but actually the logic and how to argue and put it across to other people. So, shall I take that as concluding remarks
Thank
also?
you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Swami, also, because you provided the real insight to start the discussion. And
Right.
Ms. Esther Dhanraj, or Kamakshi ji, should I call,
Yeah.
she has really given a very good input. We
Yeah,
will be
we-
discussing this subject maybe in subsequent episode. Thank you very much. Thanks Jagdish Shetty ji. Thanks Ramesh Swami ji. Thanking the technical team led by Ashish Shetty, Gadgi Rakesh, Ishwar Iyer, Swaminathan, Tejas, Vishal Mehta, and Ajesh Nair. We will be meeting next Sunday again at 8 p.m. in Indian Standard Time with a new episode and Dr. Subramanian Sawmy and maybe a new guest.